Word, God. Help us to get into it. Help us to get something out of it, God. Help us to see you more clearly, God. I mean, that's obviously the point of this. It's not just reading a book, but seeing your character a little more clearly and seeing how we fit into everything, God. Obviously, you don't change, but we're always struggling to get our minds around you, God. Help us to do that a little more clearly today. Thank you for the beautiful weather. Thank you for those with the hearts to come out today, God. Come out to church early to invest in learning about you, God. Give me wisdom. Help me to say the words that you want, the way that you want them said. In your son's name we pray. Amen. So I watched the video last week of since Kevin and I are seemingly taking turns for the next month on who's here in class, unfortunately, but we'll get it together eventually. Who here had a summary from last week? Who wants to try to give a couple of the key points from last week with what you guys got out of it? So, what chapter 1 was saying to us. Anyone?
I can start.
Sure.
It was mainly about the good news, and we really went to determine what does that mean to us. And I think in summary, it pointed out that the good news is actually about God and God's creation.
Yep.
And the key here, I think that was transformative, is that the good news is about heaven coming to earth.
Yes.
Whereas we always focused on going to heaven. And so it created a new period of time, which resulted in really the gospel being the good news.
Very good. Very good. I think, and that's really what I appreciate about this book, that it really does, and certainly this made me think differently about that. It isn't the goals and, and however many years I'm going to go to heaven. We've heard when Michael came here, Michael Burns, he talked about, God breaking into history. The kingdom has started 2,000 years ago, and now we're a part of it. But that's a hard thing for us to get our minds around, and we think about it, and kind of go back to the old way of thinking. So it's good to keep getting reminded that, it's not that we are going to God's kingdom somewhere in the sky, but we are a part of God's kingdom now. And that's what really makes it so valuable and really so cool when you think about it. It's not just, he made, I think, a really good point. Now what do I do? It's like, no. Now that we're saved, now we can be a part of God's kingdom. How are we going to live for the next 1, 5, 50 years we're here? What are we going to do with being a part of God's kingdom? And I think that's such a good point, just to really give us a purpose, give us a vision for our life. God wants us. God has chosen us to be a part of God's kingdom. He gave us a chance. We've responded. Okay, now what? I think, and as we look through, chapter 2, the foolish, scandalous, and good. Again, what is the news? Is this foolish news? Is it crazy? Is it horrible, or is it actually good? I know he started talking out a little bit, who Saul was and why he changed his name. And Kevin used a little bit of the Greek here. And in Saul, when you put it in Greek, it comes out Saulus. And Saulus in Greek means the sultry walk of a prostitute. So clearly that name doesn't work. We need to change his name. So he chose so he chose Paul instead. And even Kevin talks about when he's in Asia, a lot of people can't say the V, so he becomes Kevin or Kelvin. I remember when I was in England for class, I had an Indian professor, and he talked about Volvos because he couldn't say Volvo. So again, you got to change your name to fit in. But and in the same way, the apostle, originally, today we say an apostle was someone who followed Jesus, right? 12 apostles, and then Paul added on. But then an apostle was a messenger for the king. The guy who came to your city after there was a new Caesar. The apostle has come and said there's a new king in Rome. And that's really, to that extent, we can see ourselves as apostles. We're not capital A apostle, Matthew, Mark, and John. But at the same time, actually, who was an apostle? But, we are messengers. We are a messenger for the king. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool when you think about it. We're not just, some guy named Greg. We're messengers for the king. What are we going to do with that? What does that mean in our lives going forward from, noon on Sunday on. What are we going to do with that? Let's go into some of the discussion questions, just kind of going through the book. They're mostly in order. The good, he talked about, as Paul was sharing, these are in different cities, say Thessalonica. The good news sounded, to some people it was incomprehensible, others meaningless, others just stupid. What were the reasons for that? When you guys read through that, what were some of the reasons that were given of, some people thought it was, incomprehensible. They just couldn't get their brains around it. Why did some people think that?
Jesus was announced as king.
We already have a king.
Yes, that's Caesar or Julius.
Right.
Or,
Yep. Amen. Yep, that's a fair one. What about meaningless? Who just said, who cares, whatever.
So Jesus was a new God to them because they already had their gods that
Mhm.
they worshipped. And, they were already, they had a whole culture built around that and worship services and then Paul comes in and is talking about a new God.
Yeah.
And, who's this Jesus?
And oh, by the way, he was killed.
Yeah.
And he came back to life. People going,
and then he was killed by the Romans.
Yeah, he was killed by the Romans in a way that
Yeah.
was saved for criminals. So you're telling me there's a king who was killed by us for being a criminal, and now he's a king.
Yeah.
This-
That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. And who thought it? And and I think that was, those are the key points on that. But when it was, we'll get that one later. How was it? How is good news different from religion? I thought that was a big one. So many people, 60% of people say they believe in God. So they're religious to a little extent or a lot. But a lot of people are religious. People watch their favorite TV show religiously. How is good news different from religion? I think that's a big piece of this book. Because if I'm religious, and whatever. And, this is the good news. How are they different?
I think because of the basis of the good news. The good news is something that happened out of the ordinary.
Yep.
And you have to catch on to that in order to really understand and believe that this is something happened out of the ordinary, and something else has happened in regards to that, and there's an end result that will happen. So that's why it's so different. It has a heart effect to the people that believe.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. And what were you going to say?
Looked up the definition of religion. It says that religion is a social culture system, and it's something, it's a behavior thing. It's more or less, religion is something that's not, you don't have to necessarily believe to have a religion. It's not
Yep.
something that you have to believe in. Still worship idols
Sure.
and stuff.
You can be religious about anything.
You don't have to necessarily have a faith to be in a religion. Whereas having and that's different from the good news. And good news is about Jesus dying on the cross and being resurrected. Jesus dying on the cross and being born. That's totally different. Yeah, that's about faith.
Yeah. And it happened.
And it happened. So that's totally different from religion.
Yeah.
That's different.
Michigan State won the NCAA basketball 2001. That's a thing. It happened. It may
Right.
affect you or not. It obviously isn't this good news, but it's real. It's not
Real.
a thing.
Religion is not the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, Cordell,
Yeah, I liked when they noted that we tend to see religion as an option.
Yeah.
We can choose to be religious, to do whatever the scriptures say. And the good news, this was basically about adjusting your entire life based on this new news that Paul had brought.
Yeah.
So it wasn't not necessarily. I really did like this, and I wish every religious person could see this. It's not optional
Right.
for the end result that we want.
Right. Yep. No, I think that was an important piece there. That okay, if you're going to say if this is something you believe in, if this is your religion, then what? There's a next step. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? Not just okay, I believe. Now I'm going to do nothing till I die and hopefully go to heaven. It's like no, there's a lot between those two things that the religious world, if you will, doesn't. They kind of do it as the life insurance. He's talking about that in this chapter and others. Okay, I believe, so I can go to heaven. Check the box. I paid my premium. Now I can do whatever I want. It's like no. This is a response. God. The news is God Himself has come through Jesus, and in the future is coming back. We're going. He's coming back. There is real news that has real implications for now and in the future. It's the news of what happened, the news of what's going, and what it means, and of what is going to happen in the future. Not just okay, check the box, we're done. Kind of related to that, what did Paul teach? What was he an apostle of? What was he the herald, the crier of? Because that gets into a lot of the backstory and so some of the as it says, as the scriptures say. What was some of the how did Paul relate that as he was teaching? This is to the Jewish backstory, not just hey, this thing happened. What did it mean?
There's only one true God, and that.
Yep, that's a piece of it. Absolutely, that's a piece of it. Who else?
I wrote down as just summary of the backstory: the Messiah would rescue Israel, and with Israel, all the human race, and with all the human race, all the world. Kind of summarize that to be
that's
the backstory.
The first 3/4, 2/3 of your Bible is that to a large extent. There is a God. The whole story of Jewish history is his HIS capital H story. Anyone else has a summary for that? Yes, Steve.
I think of it as he's out there proclaiming this is the completion of God's plan. It's the completion of a thought.
Yeah. Jesus coming is the answer to all those prophecies, all the things that you read about in Isaiah and stuff like that.
And that God actually had this plan ahead of time, not just a new event in many ways, but it was a completion of something that was already part of. God was the one planning this out. That's how big it was. It wasn't just again another little moment.
Yep, I thought that's a good point.
I like the part where he was sharing that all the other gods were a sham. I like the way we said sham, like that they were all being done away with, and that God was a true God and we deserve that name. Like you guys are putting your energy into. You're on the right path, but it's off just a little bit. Praise on God, not the. And one part where he says that they had a God for each and everything. It's like it's just come on, let's use that energy to focus on the one and only God.
Yep. Amen. Yeah, I think that's a big piece of certainly, and that's part of why they thought it is. Some of them thought it was crazy.
One God can do everything like
yeah. Anyone else? I think those are all pieces of the answer, certainly. Let's read 1 Thessalonians 1, 9 to 10. I think that's a piece of it, as Paul was sharing with the Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, we'll start in, I guess, the latter part of 8. Therefore, we do not need to say anything about it, for they themselves report what kind of reception you gave us. They tell of how you turned to God from idols, to serve the living and true God, and to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, Jesus, whom he rescued us from the coming wrath. that shows how they responded. You know, that's how, that's Paul writing his letter to the Thessalonians of their response. Okay, they heard his news. For those who didn't think it was crazy, they responded by turning to God from idols. They served the living and the true God, and again, and for the news to come, they were waiting for his Son from heaven, who he raised from the dead. Again, the news. This wasn't, here's what happened. And they're waiting, Jesus who rescued us from the coming wrath. I mean, that was how they responded to this news. Those who saw it as good news. It wasn't, again, just as Cordell said, it wasn't just okay, this is a thing I choose, this is a philosophy. They responded. They turned to idols. They're now waiting for God to come back. It either is or it isn't. It's either good news or it's not. It's not just here's another philosophy, here's one of another 1,000 gods, the God of the hearth, the God of the house, the God of the fields, the God of whatever. Either he is or he isn't. You can't waffle halfway in between, and you can't split the baby on that one. Yes or no, you pick, but you gotta pick.
All right.
Most people just kind of kick the can down the road. I don't know, because they don't really put the time in to think about it a lot of the time. But that's not making a choice. If you're gonna choose, you gotta pick. I keep telling my songs, one of my famous Rush lyrics. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. It's, what do you want to do? I don't know. Okay, that's your decision. We're not doing anything, but that's your choice. You've now decided. How do people? I think we talked about this one a little bit. How do people use faith like insurance, and how does that change their day-to-day life? Because it's true of so many people. What does that do? And he makes a point. A lot of religious people use it like that. How is that related to their view of religion? I guess if you're using it like insurance. Yeah.
It's like you pay in dividends. If I do this, 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 and this, then I'm assured to have this amount of money at the end. But I've got to continue to pay in my dividends. I've got to continue to do or behave in a certain way to ensure that I'm guaranteed an entrance into heaven at the end.
Yeah, and I think in some of that's even the people who at least have the view of, okay, I have to keep paying, I have to keep doing something. Some people seem to almost leave that step out. Okay, I believe, now I'm good. I made my one payment, I'm good forever. Yeah.
I think it means like, okay, Jesus died on the cross for me, so, and I go to church every Sunday, and I'm in there, or either, I got baptized, and, now that I'm baptized, and I go to church every Sunday, so, it doesn't matter whether I live a righteous life or not. I'm okay, so I can do whatever I want to do. I'm gonna go to heaven anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, sure.
Isn't that the once saved, always saved
It leads to that.
philosophy?
It can be a part of that, certainly. I saw another hand, I think.
But I think, well, go ahead, Ms. Burns.
I was thinking, with your insurance policy, all you have to do is pay that money.
Yep.
It does not say you have to do this, you have to do this. It tells you one thing, pay your premium every month. And then even if you miss a month, they'll give you a grace period. But God does not say that. He says, if you want to be with me, this is what you'll do. There's some physical things, there's some heart things, mental things you have to do, and then you'll have a chance. So, he isn't giving an assurance policy where you just pay every month. There's other conditions that you must do.
Yeah, yeah.
I think really everything is summed up. Coming from a Catholic
background. Everything was kind of based in works and in works. And so coming into the kingdom, as Ms. Bernie said, it's a combination, it's a culmination of things. It is working, but it's about love and understanding who God is and understanding the message of the good news that Jesus has come and died on the cross for our sins, and that we have to embrace that, not just believe. We have to embrace that, and that was foolish for centuries of being taught you have to work. You have to work to get into heaven. You know, all these symbols, all these rituals. It was just foolish. Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yep. No, I think that's true. What do you want? Yeah, Mel.
I would say like an insurance policy, you know, it's pretty thick. Who here reads the whole policy? I don't. But who here may read a portion of it that you like, okay, I don't know about all this other stuff, but I like this part of the policy, so I'm gonna buy
Covers
it.
hail. Yep.
And so you forget about all the other things until something happens. And then that insurance person says, well, you know, did you read line 4 or 5 of that real small section? That's not covered. Sorry. So similar with some people in their faith, you know, they only see, okay, God saves and I'm good. I just need to accept him and then I can go about living my life. They don't read the rest of the policy. And so that's how I see it, as in some religious people only take one aspect of what is of the good news and then discard the rest and tell.
Yeah, I think he used the word the soterian gospel, just focusing on salvation. This is what you have to do to be saved. Well, yes, that's in there. That's really important, but that's not the good news. The good news that wasn't preached was this is how you get to heaven. That's a pretty short part of all of it. It's a much broader piece, and when we focus on the insurance policy aspect, it's the salvation. That's the title of that piece. And okay, I read the salvation title, the salvation paragraph, but you missed some of what else is covered. But more importantly, everything else that is news, it didn't pay it. It leads to a real distortion of our gospel, of our belief. Chris, you have a hand?
Yeah, honestly, I just got to be honest from my heart. I have a hard time grasping this because that's me. I mean, the only reason I'm a Christian is because I want my soul to go on for eternity. And so to look at this and say, oh, heaven will reign on earth and we'll be living again. I don't care about all that, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
I just want my soul to go on forever. I don't want it to be destroyed in hell. So for me, this is really hard to grasp and put my mind around. I've been mulling on it all morning, and it's great to think about it. But in my heart and in my mind, I'm just like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die in hell.
Well, that's a fair piece. I appreciate your
So I got to be
honesty.
honest from the heart.
I appreciate your honesty, and that's a part of it. But you also are, even though that is your focus, for the last however many years you've been a Christian, you also have been working on the good news. You also have been telling the good news to others. You've been living your life in response to it. You haven't just done okay, I want to go to heaven, check, now I can do whatever I want till I die. I mean, so in your heart, you're saying that is your main motivation, but you also are responding to it. You're not just doing okay, check insurance, move on to folding laundry today. I mean, you are responding to the message and dealing with how it relates to your whole life, which is the point of a lot of it. I mean, whether you're focused on heaven coming down here or you going to heaven, I mean, there's not agreement on that even among Christians. Doug Jacoby's, what happens when we die? He has he has a different take on that also. I mean, so it's not like you're getting your mind 100% around heaven comes down to us. That's not a salvation issue at the end of the day anyway.
Yep.
If your motivation is only okay, I'm going to get to heaven and nothing else, well, that leads to some weird thinking. But I would say from your life, you are, even if it is your main motivation, you are responding in your life to what that means on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday basis, not just Sunday morning from 10 to 12. Check, I've done my time, move on with life.
There's another.
Yeah, who else said this? Sure.
Yeah, You know, I have to say that I can really totally relate to Chris because that is my current thing. But there was a time when I first studied the Bible, and if you all remember, you didn't have to tell people you were a Christian. They knew. They knew by, it's like, oh my God, because I can remember sharing with my friends everything I was learning, doing, and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And these people who were Christians who went to church, I can remember an entire table sitting there just looking at me. And then it dawned on me, oh my gosh, this is different. This is different. It is because of the good news. You're not the same person. Just remember that. Go back and remember that.
I'll say one thing real quick. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this book study was, I think, echoing what Chris is saying, that we definitely all want to get to heaven. That's a big focus. But I think the issue is when we see that as the gospel, that's where it's a problem, because the gospel is not just about us. It's like us, me-centric. That's not the gospel. The gospel is Jesus-centric. The gospel is kingdom-centric. Now, within that big category, if you will, we fit into that, and we should. But that's not the main thing. The main thing isn't me getting to heaven. The main thing is Jesus Christ reigning and making a difference in this whole world. That's the main thing. We fit into that, but the main thing is the gospel. And that's why I think this study is so important. And the reason it's also very important is because if we take the gospel as just me, then we can fall into many vicissitudes. Like, oh, I'm going through this. Oh, I'm going. Now, God does care for us. He definitely wants to make sure that everything goes well for us. But we can fall into like everything revolving around us when it really should revolve around Jesus. And we always say it's all about Jesus, but this becomes kind of confusing when we actually talk about it in reality and what the gospel is all about. So that's kind of why we wanted to kind of do this study. So it's not to take away from us being in heaven and coming down. That's not necessarily the thing, but it's more so about understanding what the core of the gospel is. And the core of the gospel is Jesus and him being king and him reigning. That's the core.
Yep. Yeah, no, and that's exactly true. I mean, that's, and I think some of the discussion that we've already done, a lot of this is, we'll get into that next one, but, how was Paul's message telling people that they didn't need the old gods received? What happened in some of the cities he went to when he told people that there is only this one Jesus and you don't need all the other gods?
No will.
One summary, yeah.
They were definitely offended. It was something new to them, a new teaching that they couldn't comprehend.
Obviously, it was met with resistance, riots, Paul almost losing his life on several occasions, ultimately losing his life. But it was a different way of teaching, but it was basically shaking the foundation of the culture and the way these individuals have lived their lives. Because you talked about earlier, they had the gods for everything. This was a way of life for centuries. So to tell a group of people that, hey, this isn't correct, you guys have been going about it wrong, these gods that you have worshipped for centuries are shams, and this is the one true God. We know how it is when someone disrupts our way of thinking. Now just imagine it on a cultural level. That doesn't sit pretty well with individuals who hear that, being told that, being confronted with that.
Yeah, like some riots, he was killed. I mean, that's pretty unwelcome news.
I'm reminded of how we can see in perspective this being a focal point of history, but as it was going along, they had had many hundreds of years of not a big event, and this came out of the blue. We tend to see it because we can see it pass and go, in fact, it's on the calendar, this happened 2,000 years ago. They didn't have that perspective.
Yep, that's fair. I think, I think those are all true. And again, that's something we have to keep in mind to some extent. Jesus talks about woe to you if everyone speaks well of you. I mean, to some extent, if what we're sharing is the same as everyone else, we really should think about it. I mean, when Paul was sharing it, people took offense at some of what he was saying. It doesn't mean being offensive, but what are we sharing something that's different enough from what people heard or hear or whatever that they take notice of it, or, oh yeah, that's the same thing that I'm always used to. What is, I think we've talked about this a little bit, what is the distorted purpose of Christianity that some churches and even Christians have? We talked about that a little bit, but I want to put a finer point on it. Some of the things we've talked about so far, what distortions does that lead to getting off, taking off Jesus is the good news. The good news is the kingdom. The good news is so much broader. How does seeing that wrong lead to a life that doesn't match?
Advice versus the good news.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, we have to be sure. Yeah.
Do this if you want to get to heaven.
Yeah, it can also be just 100% works, like Andrew was saying, the Catholic, okay, gotta check the 14 boxes, and if so, in return for this, you get to go to heaven. It's not a quid pro quo. Steve?
I think it's easy for us to make the good news be, if you follow Christianity, your marriage will be better, your kids will be better, you'll be more rich.
Kind
It's
of
all
insurance.
benefits for me. No,
Yeah.
it's all benefits
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
The insurance.
Nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah, the
It's just
prosperity
the benefits
gospel.
of me.
Yeah, that's fair.
All
Selfish
churches-
Christianity.
Churches set up their own rules.
Yeah, yeah.
Churches set up their own man-made rules.
Yeah.
Definitely self-righteousness.
And they
Look
take
at
the
me.
Christianity out of what's supposed to be.
Yeah, amen.
Churches set up their own rules and leave out the Christianity.
Yeah, those are all fair. Let's go on. Yeah, Chris.
And no, what Sharon was saying kind of hit a point on me is that the self-righteousness that we look at, this is what you got to do to be saved, and when you're not doing the right thing, now, at least this is what I feel, I don't know if anybody else does, like, you're doing the wrong thing and you're wrong, and now you're an enemy of me, as opposed to, hey, that's not what it's about. It's not like you're not following, it's like, hey, God's coming back, he's going to establish his kingdom, it's here. Grasp hold of it. It's great news. Come on, I want you to be with me, instead of making you an enemy because you're not doing what I perceive as what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, amen. There was a one on 1 Corinthians 15. He talks about 1 Corinthians 15, 3-6 is the pivot point. And I want to read that, and we can talk about that for a couple minutes, because he's right. For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Peter and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. How is that the pivot? How is that the piece that everything goes one way, goes one way or the other on? When you read through that, how is that the key of the message that you see it? Is there something else that you think should be in there, or do you think that really is the summary of, the 3-verse summary of the New Testament to some extent?
I'm sorry, Greg, that was.
1 Corinthians 15, 3-6. Actually, it's 4 verses, but.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with faith. I mean, it's either you believe he died and resurrected, or you don't. I think that's where the pivot will come in, because it's either you believe he died and he came back, or he didn't. It's the one or the other. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because there were people who physically seen it, and Paul is sharing and trying to persuade those to say, hey, it actually happened. It really did happen, and you have a choice to make at this point. Either you believe and have faith that this event occurred, or you don't.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, again, it's a yes or a no.
When I look at that, the good news, I'm focusing on 3 important things. Jesus died, he was buried, he was resurrected, and there were actually witnesses to the resurrection. He first appeared to Peter, and then the apostles. So, therefore, the backstory is no longer. Now we have, it's like a heaven, which is now here on earth, and he has passed through all the three phases, which is the good news.
Yeah, amen. I think that's fair. Chris?
For me, the at least the things that I read in the book that stood out to me were the fact that it was predicted, it happened, and there's people that actually saw it, like you shared. And I think for the audience, with the backstory is that it was predicted. It said it was going to happen, and it did. And here's the proof that it happened.
Yep.
And so to them, it would have been great news that it actually, or it should have been great news that it actually did happen.
What God promised to do, he did. And now that means that the next piece is going to happen also.
Just piggybacking off of Chris, that was pretty much the point I was going to make, is that he kept referring to the scriptures, which was the Old Testament during that period of time, and he's like, look, this whole combination of what we've been going through with these scriptures up to this point has been fulfilled in Jesus. He died according to the scriptures that we've read for centuries. He was buried and he raised from the dead according to the scriptures that we read about. And, so he is the culmination of all of that. And because of that, everything now has changed according to the scriptures.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a big piece. One other thing I want to talk about, we've got 5-ish minutes left. The part of the book he devotes to what is some of the power of the good news. How did, again, some people thought it was crazy, some foolish, some just blew it off. What was the power of the good news? To those who did, there's the scriptures that talk about to those who received the good news. What was the power that when people did receive it, what happened? Hopefully the same thing that we've seen in our life, or are working towards in our life too. Yeah, go ahead.
It was life-changing for those who accepted it and believed in it.
There you go.
Yep, amen.
Power of the change.
Anyone else? I think that's a fair summary. Kat?
I know for me, it was, not only was it life-changing, but it was, to me, it was almost like a miracle in my own life, because it was answers. It was cut and dried, clear answers for me, because I had grown up very religious of, be a good girl, what does that mean? No one can define it. There's nothing that's concrete in any of it, but the gospel is incredibly concrete, and there's a lot of proof that it all happened. And so for me, it was like an answer to prayers I'd been praying since 3rd grade of, God, what do you really want? And it was like, it was like the heavens opened up and the angels started. I was so happy because I had answers, because ethereal things don't work good for me. I'm very like cut and dry, and so for that, it was amazing, and it did totally change my life, and I am so, it made my life a million times better. Even just with those facts, regardless of what happens to me in my life, just knowing all that has made the whole difference for me.
Amen. Yep, I think that's true.
From the book, and it really hits home, is the power of those who actually receive the message. When he quoted C.S. Lewis, when he said that, I believe in Christianity like I believe in the sun, not because I see it, but by it, I see everything else more clearly. And I think that's how it is. Once those who receive the message, now they're able to make sense of the world. A lot of things just seems it doesn't make sense. Why is this? But once you receive the good news, now in the light of that, you're able to live a life to the full, because now things actually make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that point.
I like what he says here. He said the good news, it transforms us.
Yep.
It transforms us, and Jesus becomes personally present and real to them. And like Kathy, before studying the Bible, I didn't even have a clue who Jesus was. And so studying and becoming a Christian, I'm like, I think the good news is that we're constantly learning and understanding who he is. He's becoming more personal as we go through the challenges. He does stand by our side, and it says it was the royal announcement. And I think it's like, how will we continuously embrace the royal announcement that he has died, he has risen for us. It is personal. He's right here with us. And we're constantly being transformed until he returns. It's not a one stop. It's like we continue to evolve and get a deeper understanding of him. That's the continuous good news.
Yeah. Yep. If you,
Yeah. I personally, to me, I was taught as a little child, Jesus loved me. It didn't make any sense to me.
yeah.
But understanding and internalizing the good news, I understand that God is personal to me, and it's just like he's sitting right here with me at all times. And then once I was saved, he came here, and I can understand more and more of the Bible, what he's saying to me, and what he's telling me about himself. So that is his wisdom and his power that's in me. I don't know if I have a whole lot of his power or not, but I have his wisdom within me.
Yep. Amen. Amen. We got about 2 more, supposed to wrap up at 1:45, right?
You want to cover the news real quick, just the 4 aspects of it?
Yeah. No, I think
I think is it page 23? I might be correct.
Yeah, there were 4 aspects to the news that we wanted to focus on. Yep. Yep. Yeah, and I think, there's 4, for me at least, it's the middle of 23, the definition of good news, which I think, and then I want to read the closing paragraph in the chapter. But I mean, again, just for us to put it into perspective here, even from chapter 1, for something to be good news, it has to be an announcement of an event that's happened. Again, not just an opinion, not an option. There's a larger context or a backstory. Again, his example of the rugby match. There's all the what into that. A sudden unveiling of a new future that lies ahead, and a transformation of the present moment, sitting between the event that did happen and what will happen. And again, that's what we read about in 1 Corinthians 15. It's the what did happen, the context. Hey, there's a new future, and then what it means for us today. Those are the pieces to remember. Those are all aspects of good news. There is news, what makes it good. The fulfillment of all the Jewish history, of all the backstory that we looked about, the transformation. Okay, what does that mean for us now, and what's coming in the future? And I think that's the summary. His closing paragraph in the chapter, I think, is excellent on that. Step by step, Paul believed that the return of Yahweh had happened. He believed it continued to happen when he made the announcement about Jesus. God had come back in the person of Jesus. God was coming again, the past and the future. He was coming to the whole world in the presence and power of the Spirit whenever the good news was announced. And one day, God, the God who now made known the God who had now been made known in Jesus, would come back to finish the task, to be all in all, to fill the world with his glory and love, to transform everything, to rectify everything, and heal everything with his powerful love. I mean, I think that was a really good summary of, again, the what had happened, what would happen, how was it news, the is happening, the current part in between the was and coming part. And I think, to Chris's point, that's the thing that it's so hard to just wrap our mind around, that, you think about it, you get a piece of it, and then, well, wait, what does that mean? And you just kind of, but amen, if we mull it for the rest of our life and we get some of it, awesome. It's not a time test. The basic news is the basic news. How we respond, obviously, is any given day, any given moment. But the good news is Jesus did die, he was raised, God is coming back in the future. What do we do in between that is what's up to us. And then it's home to close it up.
Yeah, just one last thing, not to go long, but so every time we're able to share about Jesus with people, it's now news all over again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say that. It's just really awesome. So.
Yep. Yeah, amen. Good point.
And just to add to what you had to say, I was talking with a Jewish friend, who of course is my backstory.
Yeah.
Because that is the Old Testament.
all of our, yeah.
And it's amazing how I was able to just quickly summarize, my belief from the backstory to where we are now. The good news is God had come to earth in the form of Jesus. And then here we are as Christians, our focus is on the death and the resurrection.
Yep.
Of Christ. And I was just able for my Jewish friend to really get into the difference between their belief, which I know called my backstory,
Yeah, which
and
is your
my
backstory.
belief as Christianity.
Good stuff.
And,
Amen. And that's what Paul was doing. I mean, he was.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's exactly how I summarized it.
Amen. Amen. That's awesome.
One last thing. What was just shared is
preacher last
beautiful
thing.
because, that's really what we're trying to, I think, share is that
Yeah.
we know and I said this before, we know the trees, but this is helping us to see the forest.
Yes.
So I think it would have been maybe a little bit harder to share that before, we started kind of going through this. So this is just kind of putting a dome, if you will, over the whole thing that we already know, but just kind of putting it into a little bit more context. So
Yep.
just framing it,
Yep.
that's all.
Amen. Thank you all for coming. There's questions. I printed 15. I think that's about enough for the discussion questions for chapter 3. If no one got them, you can email me, gmoots@hotmail, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of them. Appreciate everyone coming. Appreciate the hearts and discussions, and I will see you next Sunday. Thank you very much.